Good morning. This is Vice Chair Huffman. We'll call this meeting to order. Line 5, and you're recording. Good. So we'll start with the roll call and introduction of board members.
Wendy Hess. Bridget Edson.
Bridget Edson's present.
Mindy Benson.
Mindy Benson's present. Blackhawk County Emergency Management representing Emergency Management Association.
Michelle Bischoff.
Michelle Bischoff, City of Des Moines Fire, representing the Iowa Professional Firefighters Association or Fire Chiefs Association.
Curtis Logan. David Ness. Dan Schaefer.
Present, Lake City Police Department, representing municipal police.
Dan Fank.
Present, Worth County Sheriff's Office, representing sheriff's offices.
Rhonda Broaddus. Haley Nichols.
Haley Nichols present, representing the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Cindy Height.
Cindy Hikes present, representing Iowa Department of Public Health.
Peter Huffman.
Present, representing the Iowa DOT.
Michael Strausser. Pete Hove.
Present, Iowa Department of Public Safety.
Patrick Updike. Blake Jurushi.
Present, representing Iowa Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
Jessica Turba.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't have any special welcoming remarks. So we'll move on to the approval of today's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Bischoff will move.
Bank will second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. So approved. Seeking approval of the meeting minutes from the April meeting.
Vote no motion.
Benson will second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. We'll approve that. And moving on to the Switch report.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. A couple of things to cover this month. We'll start off with some travel that the Operations Chair Bischoff and I had a chance to do a week or so ago. We were invited to go to Brainerd, Minnesota to talk to them about what we've done collectively at the state for encryption. Basically, it was kind of a soup to nuts presentation about our process and our pathway through all this and what we ended up landing on. It was a 2-day session. They had a lot of similar discussions we did here in Iowa. And ultimately, they are going to probably do what we did and land on AES 256 for their encrypted interoperability. That's good for us because that's what we're doing, and that will also help us have some consistency in our cross-border interoperability. They're interested in our standards and our policies that go along with those standards and thought we did a really nice job on them, and they thought that we had done a lot of good planning up front. Michelle, is there anything you want to add to that before I move on to the next item?
No, I think you covered it adequately. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And also, again, the work we did on that package was pretty impressive, even in looking outside of our borders, and I think other states are recognizing that. So kudos to everybody who contributed to those documents and offered public comments. We did some really good work with that one. As far as kind of a continuation on travel, Lieutenant Hove and I will be heading to St. Louis next week for some NASDA meetings with Blake Jurushi and Allie Bright of Homeland Security Emergency Management. These meetings are a continuation of some National Governors Association meetings we had a couple of years ago in Albuquerque, and they'll be focusing on interoperability, some goals, educating policy makers with kind of what it is we have going on and what our needs may be. We're looking forward to those meetings as well. Interstate interoperability, there's no real change on the status of Minnesota. They're still waiting for some parts deliveries, but once those are delivered. They'll get them installed, and then we'll have that ability to patch cross borders on the fly and on demand and as needed. And of course, I mentioned the encryption discussions that they had last week as well. New item, we did have our interstate interoperability meeting with Illinois in Clinton County. So again, thank you to Clinton for hosting that. That meeting went very, very well, and we have a lot of groundwork laid out now, and we're going to start working on those cross-border procedures next. We do get quite a few pursuits that come in from Illinois, from the sounds of it, and that's what they want to tackle first. As far as our deployment in Clinton, that is winding down now. They're waiting for some final parts and pieces to arrive, and they'll be ready to cut over to their ISICS edition. Once that cutover is complete, the West STR will be demobilized and brought in for maintenance and ready for future deployment. Most likely, it's going to be deployed on RAGBRAI. So again, it may be in service the week of RAGBRAI, so keep that in mind. But again, want to extend a huge thank you to everybody who helped make that deployment a success. There were dozens upon dozens of people who contributed to that and helping Clinton County out. And again, the net result of that is a very good outcome from a very bad event. So again, thank you everybody for your contributions to that. Our radio cache arrived a few weeks ago. I mentioned that. We have received some accessories for those radios. We got the group or gang chargers, as they're sometimes called, delivered a couple weeks ago, along with the remote speaker mics. So our order is nearly complete. We're just waiting on some spare batteries, and that should complete the grant order for those cache radios. They are programmed. They are working. And we've actually had a couple of deployments already. They were used to assist the local power cooperative when they lost their communication system about a month or so ago. And they were also available for a recent exercise in Dallas County. So we're getting some use out of them already. So as far as regional training goes, we are still kind of figuring out how we want to handle that. One-on-one agency training is still being offered, and requests come in fairly routinely for that. Again, we can do this in person, and we can do this as a large group, small group, inside of the comm center, or with a larger audience with all disciplines. One final update for the group today for work that I've done over the last month. I've been working on our status board update. That update is complete. It has been tested, and it is expected to be deployed on May 26th. We haven't sent notice out to users yet, but those will probably go out tomorrow. There will be some potential downtime during that upgrade that will probably last an hour or so. The feature sets we're going to be getting out of that again include visual notification of when a reservation is about to expire. There will be some additional warning messages if you're going to inadvertently overwrite someone else's reservation. And then there will also be the addition of mobile browser compatibility. So if you're in the command staff in an organization, you'll be able to access status board through a smartphone's browser. Developing it towards the browser is nice because we don't have to worry about the app stores, and that actually works out really, really well. There's some known bugs that will be associated with that program, but that's because of the underlying package from which it's built on top of. As the underlying package is improved that we're utilizing for status board, those bugs should start to subside over time. That is the update on status board as well. As far as our deployment goes, other states have expressed an interest to us in both Minnesota as well on getting access to status board. In some cases, they want their own copy of it, in which they get pointed towards Minnesota for getting access to that program. But in the case of the National Capital Region, we're looking at getting stood up, so we're actually hosting them right now, and they're expected to go live on it here in the next couple of weeks. So that is my update for the month, Mr. Vice Chair. Go ahead and take any questions.
Is there any questions? Okay, with none, we'll move on to the 911 Council report with Program Manager Jurushi.
Thank you. The 911 Council met just prior to the ISICSB meeting. As a reminder, those meetings are recorded and available on YouTube if you have a lot of interest in 911. Not a lot of relevant topics for this group. A couple things to highlight. Sent an email out late yesterday that we received notification that AT&T is beginning to use location-based routing on 911 calls. That's kind of that blue dot on your smartphone for the mapping or Uber type of applications. So that should increase the accuracy both of call routing and caller location on AT&T. And it looks from everything that it was actually rolled out earlier this week. So made the PSAPs aware of that change. Really, finally, I was asked to present at APCO in Anaheim in August. For those that aren't familiar, I represent the Association of My Peers, which the organization is called NASNA, the National Association of State 911 Administrators. And for NASNA, I sit on the Public Safety Advisory Committee for FirstNet. So a long way of saying I was asked to talk about FirstNet at APCO. So I have received permission to do that. I'm intending to talk about our Zetron dual backhaul, where we use FirstNet LTE. It's kind of a backup for call delivery, backup to the ICN. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. I do have one more comment that I'll hold for information sharing. It's more department-centric than 911-centric, so I will have a little bit more at that point. Any questions for me? Thanks.
Thank you. With none, we'll move on to the Finance Committee update with Mr. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Monthly expenses for the month of April were $14,920.48. Currently, our available funds are $177,682.39. Reminder that the fiscal year ends on June 30th. So at that point, we'll have another appropriation added to the Essex Board's pot of money. That's the report for the month. I can go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, with no questions, move on to the Governance Committee. We met earlier. Oops. Oh, sorry. I just one. User Group Committee with Vice Chair Dennis. Sorry.
And Rob may not be on the line right now. He's got training today. I can cover that.
Sure.
User Group Committee met last month. 3 applications were moved on for approval today. They're listed under new business, and we can go over them under new business.
Right. So good. Now for the Governance Committee for real. We met and discussed the system maintenance program. There we go. System maintenance programming qualifications and customer enterprise network. There was only one. There was a minor change to add the term external to external contract service providers to add clarity to that. And there were a couple of changes involving the use of USB flash drives to help maintain system security and prevent malware from being installed on the core ISICS computers, as well as any other connections to the ISICS customer enterprise network. The Governance Committee saw no issues with it and recommended it for public comment or for adoption. Adoption. Okay, so we'll be voting on that one later. Any questions about that? Okay, with none, we'll move on to the Operations Committee with Chair Bischoff.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Operations Committee met once since our last meeting. It was there were only two members in attendance. I was unable to attend, as was Swick Myers. Swick Myers covered for me. There was some conversation about the comments received, but since only one agency was represented, we're going to have that further conversation about comments received on the encryption packet at our next meeting, as the other scheduled meeting was when the Swick and I were in Minnesota, so that meeting got canceled. So that's the status of operations. Are there any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. And then the Outreach Committee report with Swick Myers.
Yeah, thank you. Continue to send the newsletter out every month. We're always looking for people to highlight under the public safety spotlight as well. So if you have not been spotlighted there, or you know someone that should be spotlighted, please let Holly know and she'll get them in there. Look for some announcements to potentially be in that bulletin here when it's released next week as well, related to some training courses. So that's the update from the Outreach Committee. That's back to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Any questions about that? With none, can we have the training committee report with Chair Nichols?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. Our summer training is beginning to get underway. We have a INTD in Marshall County starting next week, and I think it's down to 11 attendees, a good number. CompT course has almost met the minimum, last I heard, and the registration is still open for that. We have a ComL that will be held, and the announcement for that will be posted soon. Some people may need ICS 300, and Des Moines Metro has an online option that could be made available, which will help them get their requirements. And then there will also be a ComEx in Union County, and that's being put together. And that is all I have for the training report.
Any questions? Well, thank you. Technology Committee update with Chair Updike.
I think Patrick may be in training today too with Florinda. I think they're doing an exercise down there. Yeah, I can cover that. Technology met last month. They discussed primarily what we're going to need to do for a couple of items, including the air-to-ground simplex channels. The notion of having to license them caught not only us, but a little bit by surprise to some other states as well. So we discussed pathways to get those licensed. In some ways, there's kind of signs that maybe you should go through a frequency coordinator, but then also you may not have to because they're already outlined and coordinated nationally. So we're kind of doing our own level of frequency coordination at this point. We'll probably have DPS license those. There's no cost to DPS those for the state, and then everybody can use that license just like we use the ISICS frequencies. So that'll be the path we're taking with that for the air to ground. Also had some discussions on 800 megahertz simplex channels as well. They've been coordinating with our 800 megahertz RPC on updating our 800 megahertz channel plans to allow for those channels to be used in that fashion. And then from there, the technology committee will take up that once they're done updating that plan, license them, and then develop policy and procedure for their use. The update to the technology committee. That's back to you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions about that? With none, can we have the FirstNet Broadband Committee update from Chair Bischoff, please?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. The FirstNet Committee met this week, and we had a standard business meeting. At our next meeting, we will have a presentation on in-building coverage and ways that that can be improved through some devices that AT&T and the FirstNet Authority have worked to make available, as well as our new authority rep and Lisa Dixon intend to be in person at that meeting. So we'll get to meet our new rep. I'll let Kevin introduce him later and in the meeting, and so that we'll get to meet them in person next month. Any questions for me regarding FirstNet? Thank you.
With none, thank you very much. I understand Chair Ness is on now. If you are, do you want to take over, or do you want me to just keep running with it?
Peter, why don't you keep running with it? I'm a little out of breath and looking through my paper, so I think I've got something on the agenda. Otherwise, I'll let you run with it. Thanks.
All right, no problem. Moving on to other reports, we have information sharing of board members.
One of the things that we're doing with the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management is kind of tweaking the way we do our state emergency operations center response. Historically, our plans have been written for emergency support function. So ESF2 is communications. We are starting to align how we actually respond with our planning. So previously, if we needed an STR trailer to go somewhere, we would turn to DPS and just task them. If we needed DOT to light up signs, we would just turn to DOT and task them. in the future, what we're trying to organize at this point is more of a communication-centric focus. So we would task ESF2 to move an STR trailer. Still, absolutely, DPS is going to be doing that, but it's just organized a little bit differently. So for some of the ESFs, it's not that big of a transition. For ESF2, it really is kind of bringing all of these components that we've really been stovepiped previously and bringing them together. So we are starting to have those meetings and kickoffs. ESF2 is scheduled for later this month. There's a couple things still actually tied back to the AAR and the derecho that we'll be taking on, as well as kind of just exchanging business cards. In emergency management, it's kind of a well-known thing. You don't want to exchange business cards in the middle of a disaster. So we're going to make sure we all know who's who in the zoo, know what capabilities each agency brings to the table, and kind of just start to think about operating that way during a disaster. So I wanted to make everyone aware. A handful of people on ISICS and in the room have probably gotten the invitation to that kickoff, so that's kind of what that is, and you've all just got a little preview of it. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Chair, I got something. Keith Hope with DPS. Yesterday, I was informed that any STD board voted to approve my appointment to the P25 steering committee. So we had a conference in July 12th and 14th with, so exciting. Very.
No, thank you. Swing Myers. I have one thing, Mr. Chair, our Vice Chair. Want to let everybody know today, you've heard some updates over the past several months about Jim Lundstead's retirement and ECD working to fill that position. When Jim retired, it did create a fairly sizable void that needed to be filled with respect to our level of coordination with our federal partners. I was encouraged to apply for that position, and throughout the application process, and now that that's concluded, I wanted to let everybody know that I was selected for that role. This will be my last board meeting in this capacity as your SWIC. It wasn't an easy decision to make. I've enjoyed my time here, and in reality, there's only a few positions out there that would have ever made me consider wanting to leave. This is one of them. So we've done a lot to improve interoperability over Iowa over time, and I see a lot of good things coming for us as well. So as of early June, June 6th, I believe is my official start date now, I will be transitioning over to the Emergency Communications Coordinator for Region 7. During that transition, and even after that, I'll still be around. Lundstead was always around for a phone call or assistance if needed. The current plan at this point is to work as closely as I possibly can with the board, its committee chairs, and DPS and DOT to help with projects that are ongoing. In some cases, that may be a daily call. In some cases, that may be a weekly call. In some cases, it may be multiple times a day, depending on what the needs arise. So you think about the projects we have out there at this point. We have CommU courses that are going to be delivered soon with INTD, CommL, CommT, and our communications exercise. We've got our TIC-P and FOG and EFOG that are out there still, and our cyber assessment of ISICS. So as the ECC, I'll still be pretty close to the jet engine on a lot of those things and be able to assist us through those and even going forward beyond that. I've been working pretty closely with Lieutenant Hope and Captain Pearson DPS about the next steps as well for my eventual replacement. We've been pretty fortunate at the state to have stability in this position over time, and I think that's contributed to a lot of our success. We're only on our third SWIC, and there's some states that are on like their 13th. So we are going to be working to get that position filled as fast as we can. So there will be no lag time on getting that done. I do want to thank everybody here that's been on the board, on a committee, or worked with me on a project in the past for your vote of confidence for me serving in this role. It means a lot, and I hope I've served everybody well in this role. For those of you that know me well, you know that I'm not just going to pick up and leave, so I will be doing everything I can to help out as well. That's my update here, Mr. Vice Chair.
Well, on behalf of the board, I do want to thank you for your Herculean and tireless efforts on any number of projects. The level of coordination you've given us has enabled enormous progress And it's been very impressive, and it's really honestly been a pleasure to work with you on these things. So thank you very much.
Yeah, can I echo that? I am really going to miss working with you. I think I've only had to raise my voice once or twice. And Captain Pierce, if you could please pick somebody that I can get along with, I would really appreciate it. For those that don't know, Chris and I either meet in person or talk every week about joint 911 interop stuff, so we're all on the same page with what each other are doing and what our two councils and boards are doing. And I will really miss working with you.
We will definitely beat the weeds, see if we can find somebody.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again. Moving on to the ISICSB System Administrator Report with Scott Richardson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Huffman. I'll start off with some storm-related maintenance news. The Mason City site, we had a storm event on April 12th with some high winds. The site sustained damage to the south-facing 6-foot dish and the hut awning. We're currently awaiting replacement parts for both the dish cover and the hut awning itself. The Lucas site, we're awaiting 3 replacement dishes for that from the damage sustained in March. The delay has been caused by a supply sourcing issue. However, the site is operational and using built-in redundancy in the microwave paths. For upcoming events, we have an Essex Audit where Motorola will be conducting an audit of the Essex system in preparation for an upcoming system update, tentatively scheduled for fall of this year. This will involve checking hardware, software, firmware versions, that sort of thing. Currently, we're at Astro 717, and we'll be going to 2020.01, which is a new software naming convention for them. Also, Zone 2 controller switchover. Within the next 2 weeks, Motorola will do a zone controller switchover for Zone 2. This will result in a temporary bounce for the comm centers on Zone 2. We previously had done a similar event for Zone 1 on March 24th, and that went off with no issues. I will send out an email notification once I get a firm schedule for that. And like I say, that will be in the next couple of weeks here. As far as numbers for April 22, we have 28,297 radios on the system now, and that's up 772 from March. Talk groups are up to 2,729, and that's up 7 from March. And our push-to-talks are currently at 2,212,286, and that was actually down a little over 31,000 from March. And that is my report, and I will take any questions.
Okay, thank you. And with no questions, do we have a FirstNet Authority or AT&T update?
Yeah, so I do have an update for the board. We added an additional tower site southeast of Omaha and Silver City. That's the only site we've added since our last ISICSB meeting. And then we also have our RAGBRAI operations and logistics planning meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We've distributed that invitation to local stakeholders along the RAGBRAI route. If there's anyone a part of this group that needs that invitation or wants to listen in on that conversation, let me know and I'll forward that along. The purpose of the meeting is to do on-the-ground planning as far as point of contact and deployment locations for the Stackpole asset for the week of RAGBRAI, determining if there's actually a Stackpole needed or if it's going to be in a hot standby location or a deployment. So that conversation will be happening tomorrow morning. So let me know if you need the invite, and we'll forward it over.
Thank you. Okay, then moving on, the CCECD update with Jim Stromberg.
Hey, good morning. Thank you. CISA's Emergency Communications Division is ramping up for a joint SAFECOM National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators meeting the week of June 6th in Coronado, California. This will be the first all-hands meeting of all of the nation's SWICs since COVID began, and it's going to be a terrific opportunity for learning and relationship development. CISA Emergency Communication Coordinators will be supporting the National Association of 911 Administrators Interoperability Workshop in St. Louis, May 17th to 19th. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Iowa team of Lieutenant Hove, Slick Myers, Blake Jurushi, and Allie Bright at that meeting. CISA reminds all emergency communications critical infrastructure to keep your cybersecurity shields up. You've heard me say this in every meeting, but it's an important reminder to go to cisa.gov and click on the Shields Up banner to make sure that you're on top of all of the cybersecurity guidance from CISA. And finally, the Emergency Communications Division and CISA is thrilled to bring Slick Myers on board as Emergency Communications Coordinator. Well, we're excited to have him. I think Iowa should be equally excited, although you're losing him as the SWIC. He is going to be a tremendous asset to Iowa with his, of course, his time in Iowa. He knows all the nuances and all the details, and CISA will continue to allow him to support your state. And I just think he's going to be a great asset to all of Region 7. So I'd just like to congratulate Chris, and I will continue to partner with him during the transition, but I have no doubt that he'll be up to speed in no time flat. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Moving on to the Standard Working Group report from Slick Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Standards met last month. We had a standard to review. The standard update that we went over, as you mentioned before in governance, was standard 4.6.0. It's under system maintenance, programming qualification, and customer enterprise network. There were some edits to the standard primarily under sections 4 and 5. And these edits were done under the advisement of some cybersecurity subject matter experts we had a chance to speak with at the International Wireless Communications Expo in Las Vegas in March. Had a long discussion with one of them about things that we could do today to try to make things better. And the simple thing of USB drives came up, and then also adding a little bit of clarification to how we handle our customer enterprise networks. We don't use a lot of USB sticks on ISICS, which is a good thing, but they do serve a role in some elements of disaster recovery. So we wanted to make sure that we had that button that was possible to protect ourselves but still have that same capabilities. So as a part of the updates to the standard, any USB stick that would ever be considered for use on the system should be scanned by at least 2 anti-malware applications before they're even considered to be plugged into the system. And once they are scanned and found to be clean, they should only be used for ISIC stuff thereafter. That's been a practice of a lot of agencies. They tend to use new USB sticks. We also want them to be scanned before they're plugged in. The other thing that was added to the standard is something that deals with the customer enterprise network. The customer enterprise network is something where if you are connected to it, you can make some types of system level changes that you can't make any other way. The recommendation from that was to use a computer that was cleaned by a system manufacturer representative that's qualified to do so. And then once the computer is connected to the SEN, it should only be used for SEN activity. Again, that is basically the current practice today anyway, but it was advised to get that in the standards just in case someone wanted to recycle a PC and then use it for the SEN. So this standard was edited in accordance to that feedback. Found to be appropriate and then passed on to governance, and I believe it's on business later on in the agenda.
All right, any questions? If none, I'll to roll right into the information sharing.
Right, so another update. We had some follow-up meetings with the CISA group consisting of Rob Dew and John Festival and their contractors. We met with DPS again and the Des Moines metro area agencies and also Boone County.
A lot of good information was exchanged there with follow-ups with DPS and the Des Moines metro area agencies, and also with an opportunity to meet with Boone County for the first time. So good information passed back and forth there on the status and needs of CADs. I think the DPS meeting was especially good because they had a lot of new stakeholders there and they got exposed to that for the first time. So we're hopefully going to have a report from that group here relatively soon, and then we'll see if, what the next phase is going to be for that. All right, any questions about that?
With none, moving on to old business, we have the encryption document package.
Michelle, do you want to take that or should I?
Go ahead, Chris. I don't know that there's much more to add to it from my operations report, but you were at the meeting, so go ahead.
Yeah, basically everything Michelle said before about operations, county adjudication has started. We did reach, or we're going to possibly reach out to one county for additional clarification, but that's about it. We're in the early phase of that.
All right. Any further questions about that?
With none, we'll move on to new business, and we have some new ISICS user applications up for approval.
Yep. We can cover that in the absence of Vice Chair Denner. We have 3 applications up for approval today. They are the Davis County Sheriff's Office for Level 2 access. They're looking at statewide roaming talk routes to use on the system for transports and also possibly law enforcement backup talk routes as well. They do have power in the middle of their county, and the coverage should be pretty good there. Monroe County is applying for Level 1 access for the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and Elvia PD, so they'll have access to the interoperable talk routes after that. And then the Palo Alto County Sheriff is updating their application to Level 2. They had signed up for Level 1 access a month or 2 prior. They want a statewide roaming talk route for their transports as well, and possibly a law enforcement backup. So those are the 3 applications that were reviewed. They were all deemed to be appropriate for voting, and they've been passed on to the board for approval.
Great. Well, any comments about those 3 applications? With no comments, then I think we can just vote to approve all of them together. All members who approve. Sorry, do we have a motion? So moved to approve.
Bank will motion.
Benson will second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Passes. Then we move on to the ISICS Standard 4.6.0, System Maintenance Programming Qualifications and Customer Enterprise Network. That was the one Swick-Myers described during his update from the Standards Working Group. So we probably don't have to rehash that. Do we have a motion to approve that standard?
Bischoff will move.
I can second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. And third, there is a letter seeking ARP funding for ISICS enhancements.
Right. Mr. Chair, do you want to discuss that to some extent, or do you want me to discuss that, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, I'll start. Thanks, Chris, and didn't jump on earlier, but I couldn't say it better than Peter did, but boy, thanks for your tremendous effort and service to the state, and we're very fortunate, as others have noted, that you're going to be continuing to serve us in some capacity. So best luck in your future endeavors, and we're fortunate in your prior service and your future service for overall emergency communication and interoperability. So thank you. The letter itself, the item on the agenda, was mentioned last month in just kind of in passing, and I'm going to provide some more information But basically, I'll start by saying there is no grant opportunity. We're not responding to outreach from the governor or any other state official. But frankly, there's, as we've seen across the country, some CARES funds and some ARPA funds used for a variety of things. There were some within Essex that thought, why not at least let the governor's office know that there are some great things that could be done if funding were in fact to be made available. So again, there's no grant we're applying for. There's no formal process. There's been no outreach from the governor or any other state official. But in working with Chris and the Interop Bureau, and I think it's been generally vetted with some with all the committees that have been met in the last month. We're working on a letter that would basically ask just for their consideration, and some of the highest priority things that kind of rose to the top are if, for instance, if we were to say 30 million is available, my latest effort may have, up to 5 million for ISICS specific capacity increases, specifically a fourth core and backup, cyber protection, which 5 years ago when we were going through the RFP process, it was just a totally different world than it is today. Channel capacity, and possibly even some leftover funds, if there are any, for durable goods at site-specific locations, things like replacing batteries and so forth, to make sure we maintain that resiliency. So again, under the hypothetical 30, my current math is that at about 5, but I'd also acknowledge that the conversations we've had about cyber security for the consoles are kind of all over the place. So this is just tentative at this point. The next large bucket I would describe is new tower sites. And actually, this is the next two buckets. But the next one in particular would be money available for local enhancements to the ISICS system. As I look at the towers that are in place today, recognizing about a third of them came from local enhancements, which were locally funded, but everybody benefits from, and it provides a level of portable coverage or other benefits that the initial system design did not call for. And in order to get the best bang for the buck, and this bucket may, in my current draft, has about 10 million, it may have some limitations. For instance, that the funds would not exceed 1.5 million per site, or 66% of the infrastructure and engineering costs. And the goal behind that is not to say not everybody's eligible, but just the opposite, to make sure that that money could potentially go as far as it can and still be a factor that would allow an entity that's joining Essex or otherwise expanding to maybe move the needle where they hadn't been able to do before. So again, that was tentatively a $10 million bucket, and with a couple limiters on there of 1.5 per site or 66%. And then finally, the largest bucket would be for new tower sites as identified by the state. There's a number of places in the initial design that have a spur or other, maybe not a best practice, areas that are somewhat vulnerable to a site going down, that don't allow for that resilient or redundant path for another site. Again, these would be more state-sponsored, state-identified, And so the three buckets, again, as I currently have them, and this is, you know, just one person's opinion to get the conversation started. Ultimately, it would be communication from the governor's office, either no communication or communication saying we're interested in further exploring this idea, you know, at which time there'd be greater discussions with the board. But we're trying to just get on their radar in case there would be, by chance, be funds available out there that aren't yet allocated. You know, they've made significant investments in a number of areas, COVID-related or not, infrastructure-related or not, and we think we've got some real good potential uses if they would want to invest in public safety, communication, and interoperability across the entire state. Locals, whether that's municipal, county, state entities, the entire system with the core capacity and the channel capacity and the cyber. We think this is a broadly embraced strategy to really move us forward. We've had tremendous growth since the system began, and this would allow us to continue to do that. Any additional thoughts at a high level, Chris? Otherwise, I just guess seek a emotion authorizing a letter such as this to be finalized and sent. Again, recognizing that any decision on specific amounts, buckets, what it would be used for would be further down the road. This is just trying to get the conversation started, trying to get on the radar of those who control the federal funds, at the state of Iowa level. Chris?
Mr. Chair, this is Blake. Just a question kind of on the process that you're thinking of. Will the board have a chance to review that letter? I think everything you said sounds great, but I don't know your time frame on actually submitting that. All things being equal, I would love to take a look at it, but as long as it says what you spelled out, I'm comfortable with it. But again, what's your thought process on what that looks like?
Got a lot of background there from somebody. Yeah, I guess the goal would be to get it to them sooner than later. We could certainly do as the draft develops in the next couple days, we could send it out, and we could probably even do an electronic vote if that's necessary. You know, with a diverse and broad board, we're certainly going to have diverse and broad ideas and over something that is, I mean, it may have no chance of advancing. So I guess I'm open to anyone's suggestion on how to proceed. I just want to be cautious that we don't get into the weeds or get into debates about how we're going to spend the money that take us 6 months and there's no longer any money available. Not to say that there is any today, but I don't want to develop such a process that we can't get something out the door either. So I'll be quiet and listen.
Everybody can follow up. Go. I don't know what the feature is here, but for that, this is Captain Pierce, Bureau Chief for Interoperability. What we've been doing right now is working with Motorola to get some quotes in regards to the towers and the batteries and such. We've got some initial stuff in, and that way we can provide more substantial pricing ranges for the ask when we develop the letter. So we should be able to have something put together here within the next few days to a week.
Thank you. I don't think that drafting the letter is necessarily a voting matter. Maybe to send it, but I would ask if there are any objections to moving forward with drafting the letter. If there are no objections, then I think that's the way we should move forward, and then Yeah, before it's sent, we should probably have some kind of review or vote, but otherwise, I think that seems to sound good to everybody.
Yeah, Vice Chair, I have a question. Would there be need to act on sending this letter prior to our next meeting? I just don't know what the timing on things are. If we'd want to give permission to send it, with stipulations if that's what the board chooses to do, so that action can be taken outside of a board meeting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Warranted.
Well, so this is Chris, Michelle. Depending on any level of perceived urgency, we could have a special meeting to officially approve the sending of the letter if we do want to get this done in a timely fashion. I think Chair Ness alluded to desire to get this done expeditiously. So if we have to have a specialized meeting, we can. We've done that before. I can think back over the last 5 years, we've had probably 3 special meetings to do things along this line. So it wouldn't be out of the oddity to do that if necessary. So.
I would respectfully suggest that sometimes those special meetings are awfully tough to achieve a quorum, though. And I think if we were applying for a grant or receiving funds from a grant, for instance, we definitely need the board authorization. Again, I'm anxious for people's feedback, but with everybody's feedback is going to come a lot of different opinions. Maybe there's a way that the board would be comfortable saying, let's send the letter, but let's withhold any final decisions on size of buckets and prioritization, et cetera, because it all could be for naught anyway, and that could really be lengthy depending on what's available or what the response is. Would that be an acceptable thing to just basically get a placeholder or a letter out there inviting their or making them aware of our interest, but not tying any decisions to it?
This is Blake again, and I think I'll echo a little bit of what you just said, Chair Ness. If we could just have 24 hours to review the draft informally, suggest any changes, probably none, and then empower the chair to make those editorial decisions for himself and send the letter. Like, just, a quick, let the board members glance at it before it gets sent, informally make any recommendations, and then just go ahead and take those or leave them and send it.
Yeah, sounds great.
I would be in favor of that as well.
So we're looking for a vote on it? It doesn't seem like a voting matter.
Yeah, I agree. It's not committing the board to anything. I don't see it as a voting matter, but definitely something that, just in transparency, we should all have an awareness of what's happening.
Yep. Sounds good. Any other comments on the letter? With none, we'll move on to any public comments. Okay. With no public comments, are there any objections to adjournment? And with none, we will call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.